Okay, I guess that's probably good enough. I mean, that's, what, 6:03, so. I don't have an agenda. We don't have an agenda for town hall, so do I need to formally do anything to open it?
There's one
state the
topic.
time? Yeah. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. As the slide shows, we're going to open our town hall meeting for a 2020 utility rate study. That's a real nice way of saying we're going to talk about the price of water, basically. And so we've got a couple presentations to go through that'll give us a little bit of historical background, and then from there we'll talk about what some options are for us as a city. And so those of you who decided to show up, I appreciate you coming. And with that, I believe you're going to start, Joseph?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. And we are live now on YouTube, Chris? Okay, perfect.
All right, can everybody hear me? Is this working? You in the back? Can you hear me, Joy? All right, thank you. Well, I'd like to start off by thanking all of you who came here to the town hall meeting, and for those of you who are participating on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. Hoping that as we discuss the 2020 utility rate study, give you a better idea of the process that city staff and our consultants went through to put this together and to provide a efficient and well thought out utility rate by the end of this study that we completed. I'm going to make a few introductions here quickly at the beginning, introduce some of the city staff that participated in the rate study. First is Kathy Ryer, the city administrator. Myself, Joseph Peart, I'm the Public Works Director. Lisa Wasner, the Finance Director. And also some of the consultants that helped us out, in particular Blyle Engineering, helped us significantly on this. John Blyle's here in the front row, and you'll actually hear from him a little later on during this presentation. We also consulted with our city auditor, Brooks Watson, and our financial advisors, Hilltop Securities. Before I begin, I would ask that you hold your questions till the end of the presentation. There'll be plenty of time to answer any questions or make any comments that you want to at the end. So this utility rate study was funded last October, and after almost a year's worth of work, it's finished. And after this presentation here at this town hall meeting, City Council will be discussing it and possibly taking action on it at the City Council meeting just following. There were some summary sheets provided there in the lobby. If you missed that, anytime during the presentation, if you want to go grab those, you're more than welcome to. I will reference those a little later on during the presentation. Before we dive right in, I will note that the last rate study was completed 10 years ago and resulted in an increase to the base rate of almost 5 times. The good news is that you'll see the results of this study are not quite so dramatic. So while I was speaking, I hope you had a chance to look over our agenda here, and let's dive right in. Out in the lobby, there's also a map of this. This is the city of Shenandoah's water and wastewater system. It looks like a lot of lines and dots on a map, so I'm going to kind of step through it a little bit and give you a few pieces of information about the system so you're a little more familiar with it. Let's see if I can get my pointer to work here. So as a reference, we're right here at City Hall, 2 hands, about the center of Shenandoah. And all of the blue lines are going to be our water distribution lines, and then the green lines are the wastewater collection lines. So the city of Shenandoah supplies water to 1,600 accounts. 1,200 of those are single-family residential homes. We have 3 groundwater wells. And from those wells, we pump over 1 million gallons and treat it for distribution every single day. That's distributed through miles and miles of our water distribution lines. You can see the red dots everywhere. Those are fire hydrants. We have hundreds of fire hydrants, obviously for fire suppression and fire safety. On the wastewater side, those are the green lines again. That's collected from all the homes and businesses and is transported through lift stations and through those lines, eventually ending here, where our wastewater treatment facility is for the city. And every day, the city of Shenandoah treats approximately 600,000 gallons of wastewater. And the treatment plant that we have is able to treat approximately 900,000 gallons of wastewater every day. Now you can see that it's a pretty expansive scope here. You know, we may not be a large city, but we do have a large utility system. And it is costly to maintain and operate that system, as well as pay for the larger capital improvement projects that we have from year to year. And those are needed to stay in compliance with regulatory entities such as the EPA, a federal regulatory entity, TCQ, which is the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, it's a state regulator, and the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District for conservation efforts. Now, oftentimes with these larger funds, you may need to borrow money just because it's such a large capital investment. And the source of that money is affected by the type of fund using the money, which is why I wanted to talk about an enterprise fund. So the Water and Wastewater Fund is an enterprise fund. And I'll go ahead and read the definition up top. An enterprise fund is a proprietary fund type used to report an activity for which a fee is charged to external users for goods or services. Now, in the case of a utility, those goods and services are going to be water, drinkable, potable water, and then treatment of the wastewater that's collected. Now, I'm not going to read over each of these bullet points, but I do want to point out that as the city worked on this rate study, we consulted, as I said before, with our financial advisor and our independent auditor. And a lot of these bullet points came from recommendations by those consultants. And the second bullet point I do want to spend a little time on. This came up time and again as we talked with our financial advisor that this enterprise fund for water and sewer services needs to be a self-sustaining fund, which simply put means you need to bring in enough revenues to pay for your expenses. And that was brought up time and again because there can be consequences if that doesn't happen, such as paying higher interest rates for loans, or you may not even get a loan that you may need if it gets bad enough. I also want to spend a little time on the bottom bullet point there regarding the Municipal Development District funding. And just really quickly, the Municipal Development District, or MDD, charges a half-cent tax on all sales tax in the city of Shenandoah and in our extraterritorial jurisdiction. And the purposes of those funds are for economic development inside of the city. Now, those monies are distributed and governed by a board which is completely separate than the city council. And they're able to fund a host of projects, water and sewer being some of those projects, but also roadway improvements, pathways, and even parks. Just to name a few of the projects. Stormwater projects are also some things that they can fund. Now, while funding water and sewer projects is acceptable for the MDD, our financial advisor brought up some concerns that if there's too much funding or a reliance on the MDD, it could put the enterprise fund in a bad situation if the MDD decided to pull those funds and to stop that additional funding. So again, back to the second bullet point, this fund should be a self-sustaining fund. So the rate study, when you get down to the brass tacks, you want to look at the revenues and you want to look at the expenses. Now these are all projected. If only we had a crystal ball where we could see the future and see what our revenues and expenses were going to be, that'd make the study a lot easier. But your revenues can come from several different sources. The primary source of that revenue is from the water and sewer rates. Over 90% of the revenues are driven by the water and sewer rates. Now, expenses also come from several different sources, from your annual, year-to-year operation and maintenance costs to your capital improvement costs, which add a lot of fluctuation and can add some high dollar cost year to year, depending on what project needs to be completed. So as you can see with our current projected rates, and this is based on our current rates, there's a shortfall over the next 5 years compared to our projected expenses, to about $1.6 million deficit over the next 5 years. Now on this slide, I wanted to look at, I'd mentioned capital improvement projects before. I wanted to call out a few of them that the city's completed in the past, that we're currently working on, and some of those that are anticipated in the future. In the past, I'll just pick one of these, the Catahoula water plant construction. That was directly due to regulatory, it was driven by regulators in order for the city to conserve water. And that's why that project needed to happen, was to remain in compliance with regulations. And now currently, we have the hydropillar or the tower rehabilitation. Now, you've probably, if you've driven down Vision Park, you've driven down 45 and looked to the right as you've gone past Vision Park, you've probably seen this work going on. That's our large water tower that had had a large tent over it. It was covered, and it has since been painted. It's got new paint, new logo. Well, it was a little more than just a paint job. It was a rehabilitation both inside and outside. And that total project was $800,000, which actually was a really good price that we got when we bid this project. There were some bids that came in at $1.5 million. But this helps, I guess I want to call this out because it helps give some perspective on some of the scope and the scale of these projects and their costs. And then in the future, the largest cost there obviously is the wastewater plant improvements at $6 million. And I'll talk more about that in a future slide. So we'll jump into the rate study methodology. The purpose of this rate study is to help guide City Council's decision on water rates. That's the ultimate purpose for this. And to produce a water rate that's not going to pull in money hand over fist. That's not the purpose of an enterprise fund, but it's to cover the expenses. And utility rate studies are recommended at a minimum to be done every 5 years so that you can keep up with changing revenues and increasing expenses. So this picture here, I'm going to get a little closer because I'm going to be pointing at a few things on here. Mike, I'll try not to get your space here. So this is an aerial image of the City of Shenandoah's wastewater treatment facility. This is David Memorial Drive, if you're aware of where the natatorium and Woodforest Stadium are. They're right about here in relation to the treatment plant. Now you can see the scope of this plant. It's pretty large. I mean, that's an 18-wheeler pulling in. You can see how small that is compared to the overall size of the plant. The reason I wanted to show this to you is familiarize you with a little bit more with this facility and what some of those proposed $6 million worth of expenses are going to go toward. First of all, over $1 million is going to be in this building right here. That building houses the blowers, which blow air through our entire wastewater system. It's an aerobic system, so it feeds all the bacteria, the protozoa, the viruses that break down the waste that are going to the plant and reduce the size of those wastes and help pull it out of the water so you have clean water at the end. That project is to get rid of the blowers we have, which are so old, we can't even find parts for them anymore, and replace them with newer, more efficient blowers and also replacement of the motor control center, which is also housed inside that building. Another part of that $6 million project is to take this area here, that's a digester, and move it just to the left side of this building here in the lab. To build a structure there for the digester so that the old digesters can then become what's called aeration. And that's where you add air so that you can feed, like I said, that bacteria, keep it happy, keep it eating. You know what it's eating. I won't go into that detail. But to keep that plant. Some improvements to the clarifier. Some improvements on the air control of our chlorine contact. There's several projects as a part of that $6 million to improve the treating capacity of this plant and to get it back up to our permitted limit of 1.3 million. Right now it's at about 900,000. John will get into a little more detail about that. And I'll actually, at this time, have John come up and go into that detail and cover a few slides that he has for you.
My name's John Blyle, and I'm with Blyle Engineering. I want to introduce some people here tonight real quickly. Derek Wind is our Chief Operating Officer, and he is the author of the wastewater treatment plant study that was done in 2016 for the city. Brenton Stamper is one of our engineers that helped us on the rate study, and Jennifer Steen is our manager of our Public Works Division. We're located up the road in Conroe, so we're real close to the city. I'm going to try to be brief, and I know y'all probably have questions for later, so I want to give you some more information on your treatment plant. This was, sorry, thank you, Joseph. This is the largest project that was included in the rate study. We have a couple of concerns, and before I get into those, I want to reiterate that everything that the city does as a utility provider, everything that engineers do, designing plants, water plants, sewage treatment plants, we do all of these things under the purview of the TCEQ. And so when this plant was first designed and built, that was in 1984, it met TCEQ requirements at that time. The plant was expanded in 2004. We did the design for that expansion, and there are certain components of the plant that was designed in 2004 that we're concerned about today in 2020. Joseph mentioned some of those. And so everything that we do and everything the city does in terms of operation and maintenance, we have to meet all of the TCEQ requirements. We know that the inflow to the plant, the sewage going to the plant today, is stronger than it was in 2004. It's been monitored, and what that means is the capability and capacity of the plant to treat that sewage is lower than it was when the plant first went online. That's one concern that we have. The other concern has to do with the overall capacity. Joseph mentioned those. The permit is 1.3 million gallons per day. The plant's capacity is about 900,000 gallons per day, but there are some limitations too and some components that will need to be replaced in order to maintain that capacity. We know that we've looked at the past growth and we've looked at the future growth projections, and so we know that we're going to have to upgrade and improve this plant to stay in compliance with the TCEQ. And this is going to have to be done within a 5-year period. The rate study is for a 5-year period, and the projects, the CIP projects, are within that time frame. So that's kind of some history on the plant and some of the things that we're looking at that we know are going to have to be addressed in the near future. The rate study contemplates a 3-year design and construction schedule for improvements to the treatment plant. So when we did cost estimates, and the $6 million estimated cost includes design and construction, we started looking for funding sources, and we contacted the Texas Water Development Board, had some discussions with them. The project does qualify for financing through the Water Development Board. When we found out that the current interest rates are less than 1% for projects of this nature, we were pretty excited about that. We brought it to City Council, and the City Council authorized us to proceed with the application for the financing. Doesn't mean the city has to accept it if the loan is approved, but the process of application is underway now. And so, as part of the application, we will have to have your financial advisor, the city's financial advisor, prepare a pro forma. I'll call it a pro forma. And they will have to show that the city has the ability to pay that loan back over, we amortize the loan over a 20-year period. So the financial advisor, we've had discussions with him about this. That'll be part of the application. And that financing and the repayment of the loan is about half of the new revenue in the rate study. And so it's all part of the study, and it's all part of the 5-year plan. So I guess the other thing that I was going to mention, I lost it, but it'll come back to me, and I'll bring it back when I think of it. So moving on to a little bit of the information that's in the study, we looked at all kinds of options. You have a tiered rate structure here in Shenandoah. That just means that the more water you use, the rates are adjusted upward. Some of that's conservation effort. But we wanted to kind of get ideas of what these cost increases were going to be for the typical customer. This 3,000 gallons, that's a minimum user in the city. If you have a water meter and you don't turn on a water faucet for a month, you still get charged for 3,000 gallons of water. And it's an absolute minimum base fee. The current rates for residential customers, $19.91 per month. With the proposed rates, if they're approved by City Council, that will go up $1. And that includes 50 cents for water, 50 cents for sewer per month. Then we looked at kind of a statewide average of what typical residential customers use, cities of similar sizes as Shenandoah. This information came from the Texas Municipal League. They do surveys annually on water rates, water and sewer rates. So 5,586 gallons per month, that's a typical user. In the existing rates, the customer would pay $34.06 for water and sewer. With the new rates would be a $4 increase per month, $38.06. What we tried to do with the bar graphs here is compare the city's existing and proposed residential and commercial rates. This particular bar graph, this is on the handout that's in the lobby. So this first bar is the existing Shenandoah rates. That's $38. This is for 7,000 gallons per month. And with the proposed rates, if they are adopted, that will increase by $5 per month to $43. Can't read that. $43.95. And then commercial, what this shows you, again, this bar graph here, this is existing commercial for a 100,000 gallon user. That's a large restaurant or a hotel. They would be in that range per month. And the increase would be about $180 per month for that customer if the rates are adopted. This slide, these pie graphs, were intended to show what we did is we looked at the sources of the revenue. And so right now, under the existing rates, the residential customers in Shenandoah pay 21% of the revenue. And then the commercial customers are at 79% of the total revenue. What we wanted to do and we were able to do is maintain that percentage breakdown. So under the proposed rates here, the residential customers will still pay 21% of the total revenue. Shenandoah is blessed with high-end users, commercial customers, and it really helps mitigate the cost increase on the residential side. And I'll turn this back over to Joseph, and if I think of the other thing I was going to say, I'll step back up here. Thank you, Joseph.
So this slide should look very familiar to you. I did that intentionally to try to make it look like the first comparison of revenues to expenses. However, there's one slight change here. This is showing with the proposed rate increase. So now you can see that the proposed the projected revenues for the next 5 years now matches the projected expenses. So you see that it's fully funded and it's self-sustaining with the new water and sewer rates. Now, how does this affect me? John covered some of this, but I'll kind of hit on it again. That looking at the average residential home user here in Shenandoah, on average, they use about 7,000 gallons. And so for that 7,000, the bill would be $38.95. Under the new pricing, it goes up to $43.95, which is an increase of $5, which is about the, put that in perspective, it's about the cost of a cup of good coffee. I'll go ahead and close here. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome. I would ask that you come up and use the microphone. This is covered live on YouTube, and you will not be heard unless you are on a microphone. So I'll go ahead and open up to any questions that you may have here in the audience. Thank you for coming.
Did you ever think of what it was, John?
I'm still thinking, Mayor.
Still thinking, okay. Obviously, we wish that more folks would have come to the town hall meeting, but I'm glad that we had at least a couple. I'm glad that we have some folks watching on YouTube. I don't know how anybody on YouTube could ask questions, but you could always come back up to the council meeting. I appreciate staff and Blyle Engineering putting this together. I know I was probably acting like a kid throwing a temper tantrum, wanting one of these, but I felt like if we're going to charge the residents more money for something, that we need to give them the opportunity to at least hear the information transparently, and sometimes council meetings are difficult for residents to muddle through, and more importantly, an opportunity for them to speak their mind and ask questions. And so if y'all have any, please feel free to. But just the simple fact that we did this, I think, is a good show of faith, and I'm even if we didn't have as many people show up as what we would have liked, or as much commentary as what we would like, I still think we did the right thing. So I appreciate y'all putting in the effort to do this.
If I can add that if anybody has any questions later on, anybody who couldn't be here tonight, please contact the city, and we'll be happy to listen to your concerns and your questions and answer them as best we can.
Absolutely. Does anybody from council or staff or anybody else have anything they need to, or would like to add, or any questions about the presentation for John or Joseph? Or is there any way that we can get Derek up here somehow? Can we ask some kind of question that'll force Derek to come up? I'm not even pick on Jennifer. She was, I could see her back there crouching.
I know what John forgot, but I'm not going to We'll talk later.
Yeah, that's right. I don't have any questions. It's pretty straightforward. I think you did a good job of breaking it down, explaining for us, so I appreciate that. We'll give it a couple minutes just to see if anybody pops in anybody's heads and/or John. But otherwise, unless anybody has anything else, I mean, we can wrap it up. I think that was about as transparent as we needed to be. So, agree? Everybody? Agree. Okay. All right. Well, with that, then we will we'll close the town hall meeting. And again, if you'd like to come back for the council meeting, this will be a discussion and possible action item on the council agenda tonight. So feel free to come back to the 7 o'clock meeting, and or if you're on YouTube, tune in. And we appreciate everybody who came up tonight. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll close the town hall meeting at 6:33.